RuneScape and old school RuneScape, twice in a lifetime. The adventure that lasts a lifetime. When we were young, it felt like we had three main memes at the time: Chuck Norris jokes, stick figures on crack with I'm a fire and my laser by, and last but not least, no one ever quits RuneScape. We just take extended breaks. Even back then we said that when we were kids, as if we foreknew what the game would mean to us 2 decades later. I started playing RuneScape around 2004, and now it's 2026 and I'm still here. And I know there's a million other people like me with this, and many more who started earlier. There's many MMOs I've played in my lifetime, but the only one I'll come back to, more than the others, if I come back at all, is RuneScape. And World of Warcraft, but that's for another video. RuneScape has easily been one of the most impactful pieces of media in our generation, especially for fantasy fans. I don't think that's a controversial statement by any means. The game had taught many things and low-key life lessons to its players. Definitely not intended, aside from the British humor being funny sometimes. We took a lot of valuable life lessons from this game that definitely showed the real side of the world in a controlled environment. It was probably the first MMO most of us played. It taught us to toil, to not trust people, but also to find friends in difficult places. It can be a difficult game at times. It's one of the most challenging things we willingly did that wasn't school related. Remember the first time you did Dragon Slayer? Or when you're older and you tried the ending boss of Monkey Madness 2? Once old school RuneScape had begun rolling out new updates, locations, quality of life updates, and a cool new Slayer dungeon, the game had changed a lot from its original 2007 design. Even now there's things in Lumbridge of all places that are different and didn't always get pulled. The game is still one of the best MMOs ever, and mostly still feels like RuneScape. Some of the newer aesthetics feel less RuneScapey, but I don't always think it takes away. Plus there are parts of the game that aren't connected with the mainland. But one of the topics I'm here to discuss today is how the game did something that would cause a butterfly effect throughout the entire MMO genre, and to this day gave us a true-to-life experience as it once was. Even if it was only for a time, what we had gotten in those early months was truly something that happened twice in a lifetime. Old school RuneScape, twice in a lifetime. The fact OSRS was greenlit was nothing less than a miracle. I remember back in 2013 when Sorek started the petition, I honestly scoffed at the idea that it'd get the required votes for servers, which would have required extra payment on top of the original subscription. I've never been more happy to be wrong in my life. 449,000 votes for a very much bot-ridden, dying and dead game at the time was not only nothing to sneeze at. It felt almost unreal that this many people cared about this version of the game so much even after all these years. It was as if the grip of nostalgia forged the remake of the Battle of Helm's Deep 44 times as large for the attacking side. We wanted our game back and somehow we got it. The first time I had played RuneScape was around 2004-2005-ish, and playing old school was a very surreal experience. For the first 5 months or so, there were no updates and it was purely RuneScape as it was in the before times. It was fun. I never noticed how much had actually changed. Hundreds of small things here and there. What vendors sold was different, doing actual math to trade players selling runes, finding a partner for Shield of Arav again. The older graphics I both loved, forgotten, and remembered all at the same time. Notice what all these things have in common: the constant social aspect. This is something I really noticed across different MMOs, but it didn't hit me as a vital part of MMOs I played until OSRS returned. I noticed the heavy amount of social interaction required to get basically anything done quickly. The only other time I've needed that consistent amount of communication was when Classic WoW returned in 2019, and asking for woodcutting levels at the willow trees in Draenor will always stay with me. The old school servers had of course done well and have always done well since. There were no updates for a good 5 months. I remember that being a hot topic issue. Even fixing some of the bugs caused some stir in the community. I can't blame the 100% no change players, honestly. It's like fixing the infinite sword glitch in the N64 Zeldas when it came out on the 3DS. Even the Grand Exchange was controversial, which I also understand. I personally wanted the servers that had the summoning skill. The 138 combat level looks really great, but summoning is also kind of cringe, so it goes both ways. I'm more nostalgic for the way the game looked back in 2008-2009, RuneScape HD, like back when Bond Block and Silent Core were making videos. I'll put a video in the link dump of my favorite era. Who remembers RuneShark doing the Iron Man God Sword set from scratch years and years before Iron Man got put into the game? I think they also did a Barrows one as well. And it goes without saying the impact Swampletics had. The RuneScape content creators were amazing back then and now, and I believe if they hadn't been around, the impact of RuneScape could have been very different. The coolest thing was looking back at old videos when 2007 first released and seeing that you'd be able to use the guides, at least to some extent, the same ones as before. The optimizations always weren't the best, but they weren't that bad either, at least for gold making guides. Boss guides are a whole other discussion. It's quite rare for something to be remade in the exact same form. We see remakes and reimaginings with movies, TV shows, and other video games, but rarely are they ever one-to-one remakes. But even less is just a complete untouched re-release of an ever-evolving project like RuneScape had been. To my knowledge, no game before OSRS had been re-released in the same fashion, MMO-wise, that we all had gotten to experience the second time around. That's a special point about it being 100% re-released MMO, and now for its impact across the vast gaming landscape. Old school RuneScape, the impact. The impact had been massive. I think it's justified to be weary of a project like this, which took a lot of money and manpower to set up properly on Jagex's end. There's an absurd amount of work that goes into this from the back end, dealing with servers, making stockholders happy. Doing anything like this is a monumental task with a risk level I'm assuming some people weren't happy with. Through the gaming landscape, OSRS had entirely reinvigorated the health and longevity of the game. And even better, in August 2025, the highest recorded player count had happened. Almost 241,000 players consecutively. I hope it gets even more through the years going forward. We'll probably see a spike due to the leaks coming out on April 15th of this year. But not just with RuneScape. I'm going to be blunt. The chance of WoW Classic happening without OSRS being a forerunner is extremely low, if not zero. Remember the whole "you think you do, but you don't" fiasco? That aged well. Blizzard was very adamant on never doing it, and Backtrack was also pretty atrocious. This also is not a comparison video of the two, but you can't talk about one without the other here. It's not hard to see the link here, and this is a huge win for Jagex, how they have, despite it not being perfect, way better knowledge of what the fanbase is asking for than other games of this size. This also continues as the updates to old school RuneScape, and just like in WoW Classic Plus, it's only the natural progression of things. If the game right now in 2026 was the same exact game in 2007 with no updates, the game would have died probably within 3 years. The base game is amazing, but look at everything that's happened since then. You know, I don't like every update. I don't agree aesthetically with some of the new regions and locations, but I'm happy they're there because at least they're attempting to keep the game fresh. Leagues and other game modes have also been an excellent addition to the game. Leagues has basically become my RuneScape binge of the year. If I did have one critique, I wish we had a server or something to play on still. Temporary game modes are a great idea, FOMO aside, but the only issue is the loss of progress. I wish they could keep the character at least for leagues, or have some kind of league server so you could continue with the league exclusive content. A good aspect is the rewards. During the RS3 leagues last year, I got my Dragon Trophy and 300 mil from selling the rewards. It would have been 600 mil if I'd known the street price out of the gate for the teleport. Altogether, old school RuneScape paved the way for the MMO market to be more open to classic style servers for the games. I hope in the future older games that were shut down maybe could have a resurgence of sorts in this kind of way. That's a long shot and probably would have happened already, but a panda can dream. I want Terra back. I miss playing that one in particular. Life lessons in odd places. Remember the bit where people would say, RuneScape taught me more about real life than school did? It's not an inaccurate statement, sort of. A lot of life lessons can be found in this game. I think the first is the social aspect. This is probably the first MMO most of us played, and with that came talking with strangers we don't really know, if anyone, who ever played this game sat in an audience and everyone was asked to raise their hand if they ever got scammed in RuneScape, free trimming, falling for gambling games when the other person just logs out, or any other number of rule breaking that had been afoot. It'd be fair to say most people, if not all, would have their hand up. Playing RuneScape teaches you not to trust people, especially well-meaning people who are trying, say that in quotes, to do something for your benefit. This wasn't a rare message when we were kids, but a lot of us got to experience a microcosm of this due to not knowing any better in RuneScape, losing something you earned due to someone stealing it and roaching away like they had a mana gem really stuck with us as kids. Being an example of the bad side of a moral is way more impactful than just listening to that moral. The value of our time is something we all have to learn somewhere along the way. Learning the value of an hour is like learning the value of $1. By the time half of it's gone, only then do you realize how much you spent. Optimization is something that sounds fun, but doesn't work for everyone. Remember those days where fun was just fun? Yeah, those are kind of over now. Everything in the game is optimized, which, and this is my point here, is a blessing and a curse. Optimization can help the process go quickly, but can also make someone feel like they're wasting their time if they're not following it. I personally feel that over my head. Not on a level where if I'm not 3-tick mining, I'm wasting time, but if I'm not doing what's on a wiki or some long-winded quest order recommended optimized guide, I feel like I'm wasting my time. Sometimes optimizations completely ruin the fun. A good example is Majora's Mask speedrunning was almost entirely ruined over a discovery that killed any fun watching or even playing it. I'll put a video of that in the link dump. I feel as if my version of fun has changed from just being able to experience a thing to having to do that experience well with my ticking biological clock in mind. Maybe that's just getting older, and maybe in 20 years if I'm still making these videos, so I'll come back to this, but it's an important dichotomy to point out. Sometimes I feel like I'm turning into Jack from Rooster Teeth, the slayer of all fun. One final topic I want to talk about in this section is the absolute ironic social dynamic of MMOs. I spent a lot of my life inside, and even though my social problems outside were fixed a few years ago with talking to people, I think a lot of these skills started online, talking to friends, guild and clanmates, talking through raid bosses and encounters, getting taught how to do new things, and kind of leveling up in a social dynamic with people in a group, becoming part of a team, and each boss is like a new team building exercise. And I think a lot of things in life come down to an individual's perspective on confidence. If you don't have the experience of building up confidence and communication, doing a lot of things in life will be very difficult. Back at my lowest, I was scared to walk into stores. If I took out the trash, it had to be when no one was around. I was so petrified of people when I was younger. It became a big issue until my mid-20s when things turned around for me in this area. Being part of a group, clan, and guild, building up social skills, dealing with difficult tasks in a group setting, can help someone in a bad spot take a first step that can be translated to other important aspects of life. When I hit 3K rating in Warcraft, I definitely stood a bit taller after that. And after I killed Zuck in RS3 leagues and got my dragon trophy, the same thing happened. Doing something great in a video game can propel a certain kind of confidence in someone. It does sound ridiculous, but it's a real thing. Getting that dragon trophy took way more work and dedication than it did for me to learn how to drive or to go for a job interview. Being born in the in-between. So I had a pretty unique childhood. Until middle school, my large group of friends and I spent most of our time outside. My friends and I would hang out behind the woods of our apartment complex and build forts, walk the makeshift trails made by most likely prior kids who lived here before us. A wide river sat behind the trails we couldn't cross due to a rock drop-off of about 10 to 12 feet. It felt very close to how the Losers Club and It went about their childhood, except we were called the L-Town Clowns instead, and didn't build dams that backed up sewer systems. That was a job for the rich condo kids next door. We'd stay over each other's apartments often, and we'd have big parties all the time. There was a lot of us. Being an apartment kid back then was pretty cool. It was like we had an edge to us, like a personal cool feeling that you're from the other side of the tracks. I miss playing sports like kickball and soccer in front of the complex with 30 different kids. It was one of those you had to be there experiences. One day we were over at my friend Glenn's house and he was playing a game. It was a computer game played in the browser on a smaller screen. The core group of ours stood around him, taking a few turns on controlling the character. I just told him what to click on because I never played a game like this before. The game looked about as good as an N64 game. I was pretty mesmerized as I played games on the computer, but nothing like this. My mom and I didn't have our own that was working or that could play this game, but my grandma did, and I'd frequent Miniclip and CartoonNetwork.com games and some disc-based games like Power Rangers, Time Force, but that was about it. Like I said back then, video games and tech in general were important, but they weren't everything like they are today. I have many specific memories of playing RuneScape for the first time on my own. I saw the iconic Crunchy and Tim on the webpage where you pick your graphic settings and thought it was awesome. The art looked like N64 box art that lives rent-free in my head to this day. I believe it was around 2003 or 2004 when all of this happened, maybe 3rd grade, 4th tops. I was absolutely immersed in the game and I'd play it so much. It became my favorite game until Warcraft, but more on that in another video. My best friend and I even got copies of the RuneScape official handbook from the Scholastic Book Fair. That early part of my life is a 100% contrast to the last half of my childhood until I graduated high school, like middle school to high school, and I become an adult. Around, let's just say middle school and on, no one went out anymore. Tech and iPhones replaced socialization in the way I grew up in. People moved away, the world had changed over a few years, and the impact of social media took away a lot of the old ways. In my head, I can make a whole scene exactly like the ending to the Sandlot movies, but if only most of the kids I grew up with had good happy endings. Drugs became an early problem. Started in middle school, and the unfortunate failures of the DARE program didn't help. In addition to abuses and trauma, a lot of us went through in one way or another. Addiction and other things ripped through my complex pretty fiercely at the time. Instead of getting caught up in all that and other unpleasantries, I would stay in and play RuneScape or another MMO like Warcraft. I chose video game addiction over drug addiction. I don't regret it. I came out with the issues I deal with still. I'm a little too well-rounded, if you catch my drift, but I never ended up with a Fentanyl and a B-roll of a Brandon Buckingham or Channel 5 video, so I made out pretty well, all things considered. I felt like I was in the last few years before the tech boom changed childhood and adolescence as we know it. I couldn't even say it was a slow death. It was more like waves. Every year another wave of friends and kids I grew up with moved away, went off to college, found cheaper apartments up the streets, and just life kind of moving on. But I always stayed here, akin to Mike Hanlon from It, who was the only one who stayed in Derry, and he became a historian at the library. Even when they repaved and painted the entire sidewalk and streets, I still remember how they used to look, as if they encased the roads and sidewalks like a sort of time capsule of a previous generation. When I was going through a difficult time in my life recently, I was upset for a long time over some people in my life and church moving away. You'd think that after all this time I'd have gotten used to it from growing up in an apartment and watching people leave my whole childhood and adolescence. But that's not true. It doesn't get easier. It really only makes you numb. And it gave me an expectation that everything good will be taken away, so don't enjoy or be happy for anything, because one day it'll go away. And the more I enjoyed being around a person or having something nice, the more I thought it would just be taken away from me. So a lot of my happiness has been stripped away from me with things. It's like in the back of my head, all that was reverberating was how it's going to hurt when this thing or person's finally taken away from me. I had gone out to breakfast recently with someone very wise and worth listening to. He saw how I really wasn't doing great and wanted to get to know me a bit better. I told him how much I'd lost and a lot of the things that had happened the last few years and how badly it impacted me and my mental health. And he said something so profoundly simple: everything changes except God. And that's a true statement. I still play the same games I did over 20 years ago. I live in my nostalgia nook and I hold on to my happy memories to drown out the inexhaustible attempts for my personal traumas to drown me. Even to this day, I live in a cycle of video game ADD, fueled almost entirely by my nostalgic tendencies, going from game to game, MMO to MMO, as if my favorite pastimes were an ecliptic cycle like the zodiac constellations. I hate change, but learning to accept change is a big struggle for me. I sit in the same location using a computer almost all day, just like I did when I was 14 years old. I haven't progressed my life much, and it hasn't been until recently when I've been feeling the urge to really start moving. You know, continuous change and not getting too comfortable all the time will positively benefit your life and move you into the best person you can be. But sometimes it's just nice to sit back and relive the classics, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, recently my mom got in a new car, and she offered me her old one, which is a good $5,000 to $8,000. I no longer have to somehow save up with how the economy in the world is and how many distractions and how hard it is to fight to save any kind of money and this and that. So, but given all that, I've been really feeling like I'm supposed to move on with my life and do new things and really kind of get an upgrade. And there's one thing that always stuck with me through this, and it's Jordan Peterson's words, and I'm just going to play the video.
What moves you away from your country and your father's house and the comforts of your childhood home is something that's beyond you and that you listen to and hearken to. That's exactly right. If you do not listen to that thing that beckons you forward, you will pay for it like you cannot possibly imagine. You'll have everything that's terrible about life in your life and nothing about it that's good. And worse, you'll know that it was your fault and that you squandered what you could have had.
Endcard. I'm trying to get this video out before the leagues, or around when it comes out. I think it'd be best, and I'd get to talk about, you know, the game without playing and burning out before the leagues, because like, I really did want to play some Runescape, but I've been kind of just holding out for the leagues. I'm hoping it's good because I haven't done much in Varlamore. It's a place that doesn't actually interest me at all, if I'm being completely honest. I just don't like the aesthetic of like that place, or like the whole like Roman aqueducts. It's just kind of weird to me. But I don't know, maybe I'll get used to it, like I did with Zeah. So I wrote this script backwards. I've been consuming a lot of Stephen King content recently, and every time I see it, the new one or the old one, I imagine back when I was a kid and the half of my childhood. And also I low-key like that Pet Sematary song from the Ramones. And I've also been watching a lot of Cyborg Cat. She was probably my first introduction to Silent Hill back in the day. And her videos are also really awesome. I'll put a video from her channel in the link dump. I'd read it a few years ago, and to this day, it's probably the best book I ever read, except that specific scene. But the book is like 1,200 pages, so if you skip on those two, the rest of the book is literally the best thing ever. Started reading The Long Walk. I like it so far, with some question marks and a few things, but it's pretty good. It's kind of crazy. Wrote that when he was 19. RuneScape and OSRS, I still play, mostly just the leagues, though. I'm not cracked enough to get done bosses outside of leagues, like doing raids and stuff on old school. The tick system doesn't really work with my brain correctly, which is kind of weird because like I play instruments and stuff. I don't know, it's like that input delay of like I'm following the ticks, but when I click on a thing, it just feels like it's still off in a way. I'm a lot better at RS3 because it has like the WoW style combat sort of. You know, just press the buttons in the correct order. I even got the Carapac pet at 30 kills or something, so the joke I go with is RS3 chose me, which actually sounds really bad in retrospect. I like to play more, but everything going on, I can't really play games much at all, unfortunately. I get to make videos like this instead and working on my pre-study stuff for my PhD and all these other things, so it's worth giving up. Even on my days off, I can't sit here and play games all day like I used to. There's just something in me that needs to make videos or be productive in some way, shape, or form. That's kind of the funny thing, like when Leagues comes out, I'm not planning to do anything that day, and we'll see how well that works. But it's nice to make videos because my other pipe dreams will take years to finish, so it's nice to work on something for 2 weeks and the product's done. For old school leagues, I go to the Rune Trophy and I call it there. I typically attempt to get a max cape by then. With League 6, they're balancing things out. I always get to Zeah. I also do melee only. Interested to see the Combat Masters system though, because a good friend of mine gets me to play PoE every few seasons, so I'm kind of used to that kind of system, so just a smaller one would be really nice. But the optimizations will probably be too good for me to ignore, hence earlier in the video. But maybe I'll pick out different reasons, who knows. Shout out to MisterDrProf for proofreading this and suggesting some edits. 10 out of 10 would Internet Box podcast again. But thank you for watching, and I'll try to have another video out in a few weeks.